So we just talked about the empathy altruism hypothesis and the social exchange theory as it relates to helping. So let's go over some data. Let's go over some data that actually was done before a lot of these theories came into play to try to figure out kind of what theory perhaps has the most validity of the two. So this was an older study. It was done by in '82, and that's the year I was born, so it's silly that I call it an older study, but it's true. And what they did in this study is they had participants listen to a tape recording of another student, named Carol Marcy. Now, this student never really existed, but the premise here is that Carol Marcy is in your psychology class. Now, you may think this is silly because at Gettysburg College, our classes are so small. But what you have to understand is that big universities, you're sitting in a gen psych class of like 300 to 400 people. And so it's very common for you for there to be a student in your class you've never seen or heard of before. And so this other student, Carol Marcy, is in your class, and the tape recording describes this student as worried about her class grade because she was in an auto accident. And as a result of her auto accident, she hasn't been able to come to class, and she's not doing well, and she's afraid she has to fall behind in class, and she may have to drop it, right? So it's a very kind of externally valid concern, right? Where you have this poor student who's hurt and needs your help, basically. And so what's going to happen now is that there was an envelope handed to the participant. This is the dependent variable, and it says, "Will you help Carol?" All right, so will you help her with her schooling and whatever that means to you? It doesn't really matter. So you can imagine a case where if I was a participant, I'd be like, yeah, I would give her my notes, I would copy them for her, whatever. I would help her study because I have to do that anyway. Like that would be my typical response. But the question is, would you help? And it doesn't matter how you're going to help; that's irrelevant. The question is just yes or no. Would you help? Now there are a couple of independent variables here. All right, where the first is empathy. So some participants in this envelope, before they were asked the question, will you help Carol, some participants were told this empathy condition, which is imagine how Carol feels or don't worry about how she feels. Now, this is not, you may think this is perspective taking. All right, and you can make that argument, but actually it's more of an empathy because of this condition here, where you ask, don't worry about how Carol feels. So rather than asking them to, a perspective-taking manipulation would be for you to be told, pretend this happened to you. And notice how that doesn't say that here. Instead, it's focusing on feelings, and that is, once again, that is empathy. All right. So that's the first independent variable, is high or low empathy. The second independent variable is cost, and so they were also told, some participants were told that the professor was basically going to work it out so that you have to see Carol every day. So you guys are going to sit next to each other in class, for example, for the high cost. And the low cost is going to be you won't see Carol every day. Now, think about why this is costly. So if you say that you're not going to help, all right, if you say you're not going to help and you're going to see her every day, imagine how much guilt you will feel, right? You're like, no, I don't want to help her, but you're going to see her every day. That comes with it a certain cost. So the way I've always thought about this study, and although Toy and Batson certainly did not write about it this way, the way I think about it is this is kind of like the social exchange theory hypothesis, if you will. So that cost idea, that's derived from that. And the empathy thing here, this is derived from the empathy altruism hypothesis. Although one could argue that empathy, experiencing it, could be a cost or a benefit. I don't think I want to go there. I think instead what I want to think of is this is social exchange, and this is the the empathy altruism idea. All right. Now, let's back up. What we have here is we have what kind of design? It's a 2x2 design. Can we make causal claims? Yes, we can, because we have everything is randomly assigned. All right, so you randomly assign to these four conditions. We have manipulated IVs. We have this one here and this one here, and we have a dependent variable measured. So we can make causal claims. And once again, the dependent variable here is the percent that said they would help. So let's go over the results. I'm sorry if you can't see that. This is on the bottom. It's cutting it off a little bit. I'm just going to write it up here. This is the low empathy condition, and this is the high empathy condition. I know it's cutting it off on the bottom. Sorry, I can't fix that. All right. So what you see here is, first of all, do we have an interaction? Well, if we do, it's not very strong. So I guess we have a little one. Right, we don't have parallel lines, so we do have an interaction. It's not very strong, but we have an interaction. And so who's going to help the most? All right, so let's go through that. Who's going to be the most helpful person here? And it's going to be the people in this group, because these are the people who have high empathy, so they're told, imagine how Carol feels, and high cost. They're going to see Carol every day. So it behooves them to be more helpful. All right, now who's going to be the least? But one thing we have to know is that, like, this condition here and this condition here do not significantly differ from each other, right? These means are really close to each other. All right. So what's going on with that? Well, let's focus on who's the least helpful person, and that's where we see the biggest movement. The least helpful person is this person right here. This is the person who is low empathy, low cost. So they're told, disregard how she feels, and you're not going to see her every day. You're going to not be a very helpful person. All right. Now, the question then becomes, okay, we have this interaction, but it's not very strong. But let's look at the main effects here. So I've always kind of thought of this as who wins, right? Is it the empathy altruism hypothesis, or is it the social exchange theory? And there is real... Because of the interaction, even though it's weak, you can't really make a winner or loser per se, right? So you have to kind of temper what I'm going to say with a little grain of salt. But when I look at this, what I think of, okay, where is the most movement coming from? So if you look at, let's just compare, if we compare main effects and how those work, what you see is that at high cost, there's really no difference between these groups, like I've already said. So I tend to think that the winner of this is going to be the empathy altruism hypothesis, because the biggest difference in terms of main effects you're going to see is when you average the low group here. So you average these two bars, and then you compare that to the average of these two bars. What you're going to see is that the high empathy condition clearly is more related to helping, and we know that because of the size of this bar, right? That single bar right there compared to this bar, and that is all about the empathy, because they're the same low cost, right? So that's all about the empathy. And so what we have now is we have this case where it's clear to me anyway that even though we have an interaction, empathy is kind of the major player in the game as it relates to helping other people. All right, but so that's kind of cool, right? To me, is that we have this data, we have this theory, and if you're going to pit the two against each other, I would argue that these suggest, once again, even though there's an interaction, the empathy altruism is kind of the more important one. All right, so we talked about two major theories in terms of, and what's interesting about a theory is, you could say, like in a theory, this comes first, this comes second, this comes third, and then poof, you have behavior. But there are other reasons why we help other people, and these are going to be norms. So remember, norms, we kind of talked about them in conformity, where norms are these ideas of what is and what is not acceptable behavior in society. And so one norm that we care about is the social norm. And the social norm is basically what's called the reciprocity norm. Okay, I'm sorry, let me check something real quick. Sorry. Okay, so we have reciprocity. So I'm going to write that down. That's going to be kind of important. Now, we talked about reciprocity when we talked about social exchange. So reciprocity is the idea that you have, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So there was a study done by Edlin, and what they did is they had participants doing computer tasks, basically questionnaires, and they had them kind of in like a office cubicle area. So if you've ever been or worked in an office cubicle area with a lot of computers, it gets real hot in there. All right, that's going to be important. So they're doing these questionnaires, and they're doing these questionnaires, and one of the questionnaires is going to be very important for our discussion. That's going to be a variable called belief in a just world. Belief in a just world is a personality variable, and what it measures really is the idea that bad people get what's coming to them, and good people get what's coming to them. So it's kind of like the idea of karma, right? Where the world is a just place where bad people have bad things happen to them and they deserve it, and good people have good things happen to them and they deserve that. All right, so that's what that variable measures. So it's your belief in that idea. So some people score really high on that idea, some people don't. And so that's your personality. That's your own personal belief. All right. And then what happened is, as they were kind of finishing up these computer tasks, a Confederate came by, and Now, this is the first manipulated independent variable. Some people were given a present, and that's going to be a bottle of water. Other people were given no present whatsoever, so they weren't given anything. Just the Confederate just walked by. What research has shown, as in terms of think of this like a gift, and what research has shown is that unexpected presents lead to increases in positive affect. So if you've ever had a this, I don't know how ethical this is. I certainly don't do this, but if you've ever had a professor who on teaching evaluation day gives you oh, here's a little treat for being so awesome in the class. Here's a little candy bar. And then, oh, here's the teaching evaluation. Research has actually shown that you're going to have such an increase in your positive affect, it's going to influence your behaviors. So, yeah, the jig is up for professors there. So anyway, they're going to get this gift. And when it's an unexpected gift, positive affect increases. All right, so you're going to have this thing. But now, if you think about it, the participant is now kind of in the Confederate's debt. All right. Now, what's going to happen is after the study's over, the Confederate's kind of sitting outside the door, and he or she is selling raffle tickets. And the question is, how many do you buy? Okay, how many do you buy? Now, reciprocity norm, what that would suggest is for those participants who got the water, who got the present, they should be more likely to buy the tickets because they owe the Confederates something, right? They're owed them that. And what research has shown is something like this. So BJW, that's belief in a just world. So you see there's high levels of it and low levels of it. This is the number of raffle tickets bought. And what you see is that who's going to be the most helping? Who's going to buy the most tickets? That's going to be this person here. This person is the one who received the water. Sorry, they received the water, and they believe that good people get what's coming to them. All right. And what you see here is when you got a present, but you don't believe in good people get what's coming, so you don't have high belief in just world, then you're not going to be as helpful. All right. And you do see an interaction. So what you also see is that this line goes down like this, such that the least helpful person is going to be, they never received a gift, so they got no water. And in addition to no water, they also believe that bad people or good people get what's coming to them. So it's this interesting idea that what you have is this interaction between personality and, the current situation. And what they're showing here is that reciprocity is a social norm that does matter, but only to the extent to which you as a person believe that reciprocity matters, if that makes sense. You have to believe that it matters in order for reciprocity to kick in. And that's how these are working right now.